Welcome to AKC Story Loom. Please don't forget to subscribe, share and comment as it means a whole lot to me. Now let's go straight into the story. The estate of Chief Emeka was a monument to his wealth, a sprawling kingdom of marble, glass, and manicured lawns. But for a kingdom to truly thrive, it needs a king and a queen, and in this one, the queen was long gone. For 7 years, the mansion had been a mausoleum, its opulence a hollow echo of the joy that had departed with the passing of Chief Emeka's wife, Adanma. She had been the heart of the home, her laughter a melody that once filled every room, her kindness a warmth that could melt the most hardened of souls. Her sudden death had not just broken Chief Emeka, it had shattered him, leaving him a ghost haunting his own halls, his shoulders forever stooped under a grief so profound it had become a physical weight. His only son, Ifeanyi, had also been lost to this tragedy. He was a perfect reflection of the house's coldness, a man of breathtaking physical beauty with eyes as empty as the gilded rooms he wandered. At the age of 16, the loss of his mother had poisoned him. He saw her death not as a tragedy but as a betrayal, a cruel act by a world that had stolen the only person who truly loved him. He grew up cloaked in a chilling arrogance, believing that every person was a potential deceiver and every act of kindness a hidden threat. He spent his days in a self-imposed exile, either speeding his expensive cars down lonely roads or sequestering himself in his private wing, a prisoner in his own home. It was into this desolate kingdom that Akachi arrived. She was barely 18, a girl with a spirit as pure and unyielding as the faith she carried in her heart. In her village, she was known for her boundless compassion, a trait she had inherited from her parents, humble traders who had sacrificed everything for her education. Chief Emeka, an old family friend, had offered her a chance to work and earn money to send to her siblings. Akachi carried a small, worn Bible in her bag and a profound belief that goodness could be found even in the deepest sorrow. She looked at the chief and his son not with awe or fear, but with a deep, aching pity for the loneliness that had consumed them. Akachi began her work with a quiet grace that was a stark contrast to the mansion's oppressive atmosphere. She did not merely clean, she cared for the house as if it were a wounded creature. She would tend to the rose garden that Adanma had planted, humming old folk songs as she worked, her voice a fragile melody that brought a flicker of light to the oppressive silence. Chief Emeka, observing her from a distance, felt a stirring of a joy he thought he had lost forever. He began to find excuses to be near her, to listen to her soft voice, which reminded him so much of his late wife. Ifeanyi, however, was consumed by a blinding jealousy. He saw Akachi as an interloper, a peasant girl with no right to disturb the sacred, stagnant air of their family's grief. Her very presence, her quiet kindness, and the way his father responded to her were a constant insult. He launched a calculated campaign of cruelty, a psychological war meant to break her spirit. He would intentionally scatter his clothes on the floor, leaving his expensive shoes caked in mud for her to clean. He would invent menial tasks, watching her perform them with a cruel amusement, his eyes cold and mocking. The more she bore his malice with quiet dignity, the more his anger swelled, a vicious cycle fueled by a decade of unaddressed pain and grief. One evening, as Akachi was in the kitchen, preparing a meal that filled the air with a long-forgotten aroma of spices, Chief Emeka entered, a rare smile on his face. "Akachi, this reminds me so much of my Adanma. You have her kindness, her grace. You are truly a blessing to this house." The words were a fatal spark to a powder keg. Ifeanyi, standing at the doorway, watched his father, a man he had not seen smile in years, look at Akachi with an affection he had believed was reserved only for his mother's memory. In that moment, Ifeanyi's twisted mind solidified a terrible conviction: Akachi was a usurper. He believed she was not a blessing, but a poison that had to be eliminated. In a cold, calculated rage, Ifeanyi drove to the city's underbelly, to a place where he could acquire a substance that would act swiftly and silently. He met a man with a serpent tattooed on his neck, and in exchange for a bag of money, he acquired a tiny, colorless vial of poison. He clutched the vial, the glass cold in his hand, a tangible representation of the evil that had taken root in his soul. He returned to the mansion, his mind fixated on a single, terrible thought. The next morning, his opportunity presented itself. Akachi was alone in the kitchen, humming a soft tune. As she turned to grab a bowl, Ifeanyi moved with the swiftness of a predator. He unscrewed the vial and poured a few drops into her glass of water. They dissolved instantly, leaving no trace. A sickening sense of triumph coursed through him, a mixture of fear and twisted satisfaction. He hid the vial deep in his pocket and retreated to his room, waiting for the inevitable. Akachi, unsuspecting, reached for her glass. Her fingers were just about to close around it when a light, not from the sun but from a source unseen and divine, flooded the room. It was a blinding, golden flash that had no origin, a burst of ethereal brilliance that made her cry out and flinch. The glass, now slick with condensation, slipped from her fingers. It hit the floor and shattered, and the poisoned water spread out into a dark, viscous pool that sizzled and smoked, burning a deep, black stain into the polished tiles. Akachi stared at the mark, her body trembling with a fear that was quickly turning into awe. She fell to her knees, weeping tears of gratitude. She knew, with an unshakable certainty, that she had been saved by an unseen hand. That evening, the peace of the mansion was shattered. A gang of armed robbers, hardened men with a history of violence and no remorse, stormed the estate. Their leader, a man with a deep scar on his face, was a legend in the underworld. A man who had been hardened by a life of betrayal and loss. They found Chief Emeka in his study, and without a moment's hesitation, the leader raised his gun and fired. The chief fell, his life ending with a choked whisper of his son's name. The robbers moved on, their hunt now for Ifeanyi. They found him in his room, cowering in a corner, his face a mask of pure, primal terror. The gang leader pointed his gun at the young man, a sneer on his face. "Look at this boy," he said to his men. "He's got nothing. Let's finish this." Just as the man was about to fire, Akachi appeared. She had been hiding, her body frozen with fear, but the sight of Ifeanyi, the boy who had tormented her and tried to kill her, now stripped of his pride and reduced to a whimpering child, filled her heart with a powerful pity. "Please, no!" she cried, her voice trembling but her body unmoving. She stepped forward and stood directly in front of him, her small frame shielding him from the barrel of the gun. "Please don't kill him. His father was so good to me. He was a good man. His lineage must continue." The robbers froze. They had seen pleas, screams, and defiance, but they had never witnessed a selfless act of sacrifice. The leader's eyes, hardened by a lifetime of violence, studied Akachi. He saw the tears on her face, the genuine, fearless love in her eyes, and a memory from his own past, a small sister he had been unable to protect, flashed in his mind. The coldness in his heart, a fortress he had built over a lifetime of pain, began to crack. He lowered his gun, his hands shaking. "Why?" he asked, his voice a low growl of disbelief. "He's not worth it. The man was good to me," Akachi insisted, her voice gaining strength. "He gave me a home. I can't let his son die." The leader's gaze shifted to Ifeanyi, who was staring at Akachi, a look of profound bewilderment on his face. The robbers looked at each other, and the weight of their own brutal actions and the profound grace of this one girl overwhelmed them. Tears, hot and stinging, welled up in the leader's eyes. With a silent nod, he turned, and the gang walked out of the house, leaving behind the riches they had come for. They had been disarmed not by a weapon, but by an act of love. In the shattered silence that followed, Ifeanyi looked at Akachi. The mask of cruelty he had worn for years crumbled, revealing a boy consumed by a pain so deep it had turned him into a monster. He saw the tears on her face, the kindness in her eyes, and the black stain on the floor that was a testament to his own depravity. He began to sob, a heart-wrenching, broken sound that came from the depths of his soul. He crawled to her, his body shaking. "Akachi," he wept, his voice choked with emotion. "I am so sorry. I tried to kill you. I put poison in your water. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Akachi knelt and wrapped her arms around him, a silent, profound gesture of forgiveness. She held the boy who had tried to end her life, her heart breaking for him but also swelling with a compassion that went beyond human understanding. She held him as he confessed his sins, as he purged his soul of the poison of his own making. In that moment, Ifeanyi lost everything he had ever known. His father, his privilege, his home as he knew it, but he had finally found something far more precious, a chance at redemption. His long road to healing was only just beginning, and he would not walk it alone. He had been saved, not by his own strength, but by the love of the person he had hurt the most. The silence that followed Ifeanyi's confession was broken only by the sound of his sobs. The mansion, once a place of grand opulence and unspoken sorrow, had been stripped bare by the night's events, revealing the raw grief and guilt that lay beneath. Akachi held him, her heart aching not with pity, but with a profound, shared pain. She did not need to speak, for in that moment she understood a truth that no one else could. Ifeanyi's cruelty had been a shield against his own unbearable sorrow. As the sun began to rise, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, the police arrived, their sirens a jarring intrusion on the night's solemn end. Akachi and Ifeanyi sat side by side, giving their statements. He was calm now, his voice a low, steady murmur as he recounted the events, his confession of the poisoning a stark admission that left the officers in silent shock. Akachi's words, though simple, spoke volumes of her character. She described the bravery of her master, the cruelty of the robbers, and the heroism of the son who had just confessed his sins. She did not mention the poisoned water, for that was a secret between them, a part of a story that was now theirs alone to write. A shared road to healing. In the weeks that followed, the mansion became a different kind of kingdom, not one of wealth and sorrow, but of shared healing. Ifeanyi, now stripped of his father's protection and his own arrogance, was a boy lost in a man's body. He was consumed by guilt and shame, haunted by the specter of his father, and the chilling memory of what he had almost done to Akachi. He found himself unable to stay in his room, the memories there too suffocating. He began to spend his days in the kitchen, watching Akachi work. Akachi, in her unwavering kindness, did not treat him as a boy who had tried to kill her. She treated him as a broken soul in need of mending. She would leave a cup of hot tea for him on the kitchen counter in the mornings and a plate of warm food for him in the evenings. She never pressured him to talk, but she would hum her quiet songs as she worked, a gentle balm to his shattered spirit. The change in Ifeanyi was slow, a gradual shedding of the cruel skin he had worn for so long. One afternoon, he found Akachi struggling to lift a heavy bag of rice. Without a word, he stepped forward, his body still tense with discomfort, and lifted the bag for her. It was a simple act, but it was the first time he had done something for someone else without expecting anything in return. Akachi looked at him, and for the first time, she saw a flicker of the lost boy behind the cruel man. He began to join her in the garden, at first just sitting in the shade, but then he started to pull weeds, his hands, once used only to steer expensive cars, now caked in dirt. They worked in comfortable silence, their shared labor a silent testament to the walls that were coming down between them. One evening, as they sat on the patio, the cool evening breeze a welcome relief from the day's heat, Ifeanyi spoke. "My mother, she used to sit right here. She loved this view. I think I forgot what it was like to feel anything but angry that she was gone." Akachi nodded, a soft, understanding look in her eyes. "Grief can be a heavy thing," she said quietly. "It can make you forget the goodness that came before it." Their conversations grew longer and more personal. Ifeanyi began to share his memories of his mother, the happy times before her death, the small, tender moments he had buried under layers of pain. Akachi, in turn, told him about her village, her family, and the dreams she had carried with her to the city. She told him about her faith, how it had given her strength even in the darkest moments. He listened, truly listened, for the first time in his life. He began to see her not as a servant or a savior, but as a person of immense strength and beauty, a soul as rich as the land he now helped her tend. The moment their relationship shifted from one of healing to one of love came on a cool, starry night. They were sitting by the fountain, the only sound the gentle splash of water. Ifeanyi had been telling her a story about his mother. He finished, and for a long moment, they just sat in comfortable silence, their hands close but not touching. Ifeanyi, lost in thought, reached out and gently took Akachi's hand. He held it, his touch a gentle, quiet question. Akachi did not pull away. He looked at her, and the arrogance and pride that had once defined his gaze were gone, replaced by a vulnerability she had never seen before. "Akachi," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "You saved my life. You saved my soul. I don't think I can ever let you go." Akachi's heart, which had been so careful and guarded, was now open. She looked into his eyes, a window to the beautiful, broken boy she had always known he was, and saw her future. She knew their journey would not be easy. It was a love born from tragedy and redemption, a testament to the fact that even in the darkest of places, hope could bloom. She squeezed his hand, and with a soft smile that held all the forgiveness and all the love in the world, she whispered, "You don't have to." We've come to the end of the story. What are your thoughts? What did you learn? Please drop in the comment section, and don't forget to subscribe, share, and comment. Thank you and God bless you.